Kash Patel, suggested by President Trump as the new leader of the FBI. How enthusiastic are you about that?
Listen, I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee. I think the entire slate of cabinet nominees President Trump has put forward is very strong. I believe every one of these cabinet nominees is going to be confirmed by the Senate. I think Kash Patel is going to be confirmed by the Senate. You look at his background. He has a serious professional background. He was a prosecutor. He was a public defender. He was a senior intelligence staffer on Capitol Hill. He was a senior intelligence staffer in the White House. He was the chief of staff of the Department of Defense. He was the deputy director of national intelligence. And I got to say, all of the weeping and gnashing of teeth, all of the people pulling their hair out, are exactly the people who are dismayed about having a real reformer come into the FBI and clean out the corrupted partisans who sadly have burrowed into senior career positions at the FBI. The FBI and the Department of Justice are two institutions incredibly important to the rule of law in the United States. I revere both. And one of the most tragic consequences of 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is both DOJ and the FBI have been politicized and weaponized. And I think Kash Patel is a very strong nominee to take on the partisan corruption in the FBI.
As you know, Senator, there isn't a vacancy at the top of the FBI. What should become of Christopher Wray, appointed by President Trump?
Well, I think he'll make a choice. I think either he will resign or President Trump will fire him. But it's no secret to anybody, including Chris Wray, that he is not going to continue to serve as the head of the FBI under Donald Trump. Listen, if you look at James Comey and Chris Wray, there has never been a period in our nation's history where the FBI has suffered a greater loss of respect, where more Americans doubt the fundamental integrity of the FBI. And it's because James Comey and Chris Wray presided over allowing the FBI to become a partisan cudgel, to be used to target parents at school board meetings, to be used to target people who chose not to take the COVID vaccine, to be used to target President Trump, and to target the political opponents of Joe Biden in the White House. It is tragic. That is not what the FBI is for. That is not what the DOJ is for. And I got to say, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, I think together are a very strong slate of nominees to go and restore integrity to both institutions.
How do you place that up against the prosecutions of Bob Menendez, a congressman, a Democrat from Texas, Hunter Biden? Are those political prosecutions as well or not?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. Bob Menendez was literally caught with gold bars and a stack of cash with his fingerprints taking bribes, and it's why Bob Menendez is not my colleague anymore. At that point, the evidence was overwhelming. Look, Major, I wrote an entire book entitled Justice Corrupted, How the Left Has Weaponized the Legal System, and it broke down. It started, sadly, under Barack Obama, where he began using the federal government to target his political opponents. The book details how many of those partisans then burrowed in to senior career positions during the Trump administration. They waged war against President Trump during his first term. And now under Joe Biden, they have been open and brazen. And I think it has done unbelievable damage to the integrity of the Department of Justice and the FBI. I think Merrick Garland will go down in history as the most partisan attorney general our nation has ever seen. And I got to say, I hear regularly from prosecutors, from FBI agents who are deeply dismayed about the institution they've devoted a lifetime working for. Because, listen, I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice and an FBI that enforces the law regardless of party. And sadly, we haven't seen that these last 4 years.
What can you tell us about the 3 Americans released by China who were in San Antonio? Have you been in touch with them? And do you have any concerns about the contours of that swap?
Well, at this stage, we don't know all of the details of the contours of the swap, but I'll tell you, I am celebrating the return of 3 Americans, especially Mark Swedan. Mark Swedan is a Texan from Houston. His mom, Catherine, is from Luling, Texas. I've talked with Catherine many times. I authored and passed a resolution in the Senate that passed unanimously calling for Mark Swedan's return to America. He spent 12 years unjustly imprisoned in communist China. I'll tell you, I have raised it directly with the foreign minister of China. I've raised it with President Biden. I've raised it with Secretary of State Tony Blinken, and I will give them credit on this. Tony Blinken just 2 weeks ago was the most recent time I spoke with him about Mark Swedan, and the administration has pressed the Chinese government, and Mark Swedan is back home with his mother, who has prayed for him, who has loved him. I want to say, Mark, welcome home. Catherine, congratulations. I told you this day would come. This is a time where all Texans and all Americans should be celebrating.
Very quickly, Senator Cruz, because I also know you care about the case of Austin Tice. Do you have any sense that the rebel gains in Syria of the recent vintage will have any chance of unlocking Austin Tice's freedom?
I don't know. I certainly hope and pray. Austin Tice needs to come home, and I hope and pray. Listen, there's a combination of two things working. One, as Joe Biden is in the process of transitioning out, any outgoing president is looking to try to get some final wins. I would encourage him, and I'm sure he is, doing everything he can to bring Austin Tice home, to bring the hostages in Gaza home, both the Israelis and the Americans, bring them home in this window. I also think President Trump coming into office on January 20th, the enemies of America, I think, are afraid of President Trump. That is a moment. I hope we have a moment right now that is very much like the end of the Jimmy Carter administration, right before Ronald Reagan came in. And we saw on January 20th our hostages in Iran released, I think in significant part because the Ayatollah was afraid of Reagan. I hope a similar dynamic is playing out. And if we can see more hostages come home, that would be cause for enormous celebration.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, thank you. Good morning.